Doctors could be on the brink of a breakthrough.
Migraines.
How to control them.
Tame a migraine.
A severe migraine.
Throbbing, recurring headaches.
Given all the noise, navigating the migraine experience can be confusing and scary, but you do not have to do it alone. Welcome to the Migraine Guy Podcast, the official podcast of themigraineguy.com and theheadachereview.com. Now, here's your host.
What is up, everyone? It is 2018, the first Migraine Guy podcast of the new year. Hope you had a pleasant holiday season and a pleasant New Year's. We didn't do a podcast last week in between the holidays and the New Year's and the visiting and the family and the migraines. It wasn't going to happen, so I didn't want to push it too hard. Figured I wasn't going to get a lot of people wanting a podcast in such a busy week anyway. So we just delayed it a week. Sorry about that if you were looking forward to it, but we are back this week. So what are we going to do this week? Let's see. We always start off the podcast here with a little, 5 or 10 minute blurb about how my migraine experience is going. Then we're going to hop into some migraine news and then some migraine tips, and then we will wrap up the podcast. If you're new to the podcast, if you're new to the Migraine Guy, you can head over to iTunes, give us a 5-star review, and leave some positive comments. I do read all of those. Thank you to you who have left them, to those of you who have left them. Also have a YouTube page, an Instagram, a Twitter, and a Facebook profile. You can go over and find the Migraine Guy everywhere there. Just search the Migraine Guy. All right, so if you're new, welcome. If you are a long-time listener, welcome back. So this week I was chatting back and forth through email with my doctor. He was curious now that I've been on the 25 milligram Trokendi, that's time-release Topamax, for almost a full month now, getting down to the last couple pills in the 30-pill container. Wondering if I've noticed a reduction in my migraine frequency. I have not noticed a reduction in migraine frequency, and since it's been a month, he was wondering if we might want to step it up to 50 milligrams instead of 25. And with all Topamax, you can very often feel very, very tired when you take it. Sometimes you might even sleep a lot better if you take it before bed. So a couple side effects that I'm weighing pros and cons on, but I really haven't noticed any side effects on the 25 milligrams that I've been on, so I'm not really expecting a ton of side effects if I go ahead, and I'm probably going to go ahead and agree to the 50 milligram uppage on the Trokendi just to see if that helps. The Trokendi's been real nice, like I said, no side effects, and additionally the coupon I have, which cuts the price down for many hundreds of dollars to just $12 or $14, just from the Trokendi website, does cover the 25 milligram, the 50 milligram, the 100 milligram, and the 200 milligram pills, and so anything within those gradations will be covered by the coupon, so I'm willing to try just about any of those, so long as we go in slow progressions. I don't want to dump a bunch into my system if I'm not ready for it. That is one surefire way to really get the side effects kicking up. Let's see, next week I go back to my normal grad school life. Winter break will be over. I'll be TAing for a logic course. I've taught this course actually myself 3 separate times, so hopefully the semester won't be too burdensome with grading or needing to learn material that I need to teach. Hopefully it'll be a little less stressful than the kind of normal TA semesters that I'm used to. I'm working on my dissertation, working on getting that kind of hammered out. Being a migraine sufferer, and especially when it goes from kind of episodic, maybe a few a month or maybe, a dozen a month, to over 15 a month where I'm at now, that really does make you take stock of the kind of career paths that are going to be available to you in the future. So I've been going over all of that the last month, basically, just trying to think, if I really wanted to pursue like a career in academia, I wanted to teach full-time or something like that, what would I do if I had 2 terrible migraines in a week? Would I just cancel class and hope that the students were okay with it? Would I just, students would almost certainly be okay with it, right? But would I just kind of be okay with developing this reputation of being the guy who, has a legitimate condition, but who isn't very consistent when it comes to his teaching schedule? Or do I want to maybe continue getting the PhD that I am in school for, but maybe branch out into a couple other areas and do teaching maybe at like the community college or simply the adjunct level at a couple schools that I have some connections with, simply to, be able to teach and be able to teach maybe some people who are lower income people who wouldn't normally get a teacher who genuinely cares. I try to be a teacher who genuinely cares, and I've been to some of those community colleges and adjunct classes where the teachers clearly are there for just a paycheck, and they're not really there because they want to teach. I like teaching. That's why I got into this whole thing. And I know there are other community college and adjunct teachers who really are passionate about teaching and very good at it, so I'm not trying to slight those people in general, but I know that there are bad ones out there. And so if I could bring some good teaching to that area, but also branch out into some other more flexible areas in order to provide kind of a multi-stream income, that might be the best fit for me in the future. So I'm weighing a bunch of options. I have a couple things in the works, trying to figure out some certifications that I'll need. Pretty handy. I like doing home repair and stuff like that, so thinking about getting into home inspections. I've been working on a couple certifications, and without studying, I've almost passed a couple of them. So feel pretty confident that with just a little bit of book work, I could probably easily get those certifications. Like I've said before, I live in Nebraska, and Nebraska doesn't have any requirements on a lot of this stuff. So any certifications I get would simply to be, to have marketing purposes, say that I'm so-and-so certified and so qualified. So and then you can kind of do it as you need, and they pay pretty well. So I'm just trying to be flexible and sensitive to the fact that like a 9-to-5 job is probably not something that I would be good at. It's not something I could excel at. Is not the kind of thing I could commit to unless the employer was really, really understanding and really flexible with the fact that they have a chronic pain patient as an employee. So that is typically not the case because they need reliable employees because they're running a business. And so I'm trying to plan ahead for all of that. Blah, blah, blah. That is what's going on with me. Let's see. New year, new migraine news coming up. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right, this week's bit of migraine news comes to us from Ohio, specifically Ohio's Medicaid system. Starting a couple days ago at the first of the year, Ohio's Medicaid system became the first in the Midwest, at least, to cover acupuncture for chronic low back pain patients as well as migraine patients. This is a very interesting approach to providing care to migraine patients, which is why I wanted to highlight it. Now, the coverage for acupuncture that Ohio's Medicaid is giving is a bit of a double-edged sword. Like every state in the United States, Ohio is trying to find ways to deal with what they understand the opioid crisis to be. Now, of course, the opioid crisis is a very complex and nuanced topic and problem, and something that I've dedicated an entire podcast to. So if you haven't listened to the podcast 3 weeks ago on the opioid crisis, I'd go back and give that a listen to get a more well-rounded understanding of the opioid crisis. But as far as the Ohio Medicaid system goes, in order to reduce a patient's need for pain medication, they are starting to cover particular non-traditional, more holistic style methods, which usually would not be covered even by very good insurance. Acupuncture is very often not covered, or at least not fully covered. But Ohio Medicaid is going to fully cover the acupuncture procedure for low back pain patients and migraine patients. And so this is very interesting. There are a number of studies that have shown that acupuncture does have at least as good a prophylactic or a preventative effect on migraines as many of the very, very popular preventative medications, such as, amitriptyline, propranolol, those kind of medications. And so If you are looking for a more natural or holistic method and your Medicaid is now going to cover it, acupuncture could be a very good option for you. Now, if you're on pain medication, something like an opioid, and it is genuinely helping you regain control of your life, I seriously doubt that your doctor is going to recommend, even though legislators might be recommending this, even though people in Washington might be thinking this is the solution. Going off of your opioid medication and trying to cold turkey off of it, or, drastically reduce your numbers and simply take acupuncture, get acupuncture treatment as a supplement, is probably going to have horrendous effects. So I'm not exactly sure how well this is going to be implemented, or how fully this is going to be implemented, or if they have a very, very well thought out plan. It's going to be interesting and potentially very, very sad and depressing and upsetting to see how this gets rolled out in Ohio. But there are a number of studies that have shown that acupuncture is at least as effective. Now, I think the average number of visits that you need to have to an acupuncturist before you actually see the prophylactic, the preventative benefits from acupuncture is somewhere around 6 times. So depending on how many times you make an appointment, how many times the acupuncturist recommends that you come back, this could be maybe 2 times a week for 3 weeks, and that would be your 6 before you start to see, or it might be 1 time a week for 6 weeks before you really start to see the benefits. So it isn't going to be probably as simple as popping a pill and seeing some results within a few weeks or a month. You might actually have to wait a month, month and a half, 2 months before you really start to see the preventative benefits, which is why I'm a little worried that this being a replacement for opioid coverage could, at least in the short term, be very, very detrimental and very, very burdensome to chronic pain patients, specifically the low back pain and the migraine patients that this Medicaid expansion is going to be covering. I would really like to see some sort of opioid coverage with acupuncture, and then maybe a slow reduction of opioid to see if the acupuncture actually is helping reduce overall migraine days per month. That would be the kind of nuanced and well done patient-driven care that I would like to see. But given that, a lot of these people that are making the laws and passing them don't seem to really care about the details, I wouldn't hope for it. But I'm willing to be proven wrong, so I'm really hoping that a lot of migraine sufferers and low back pain patients sufferers in Ohio get interviewed, get a couple follow-up interviews over the next few months. The particular article I'm linking to is from a news station in Cincinnati, WLWT5. So I hope that they follow up. The reporter who did this article, Alexis Rogers, she has a Facebook, Twitter, and email link right here. So I'm going to follow up with her in a couple weeks and see if she will be willing to do a follow-up story, maybe interviewing a couple patients who have done it, the good, the bad, and the ugly, and just follow up and see how it's going. So that is it for migraine news. If you need the links to what I'm talking about, either the stuff about Ohio or just the general study information, lots of people last week were interested in some links that I put on my Facebook page about acupuncture and prevention for episodic migraine. And so I put those links in the Facebook page, but they're kind of buried in the comments. So I'm going to go ahead and put them in the show notes for today's podcast, which are just going to be at the bottom of this, bottom of the website, bottom of the podcast, wherever you're listening. Just click the information button and you will see the links. Now, before we get to this week's migraine tip of the week, let us have a word from our podcast sponsor. Different types of migraine monsters may require different types of migraine treatments, which is why properly identifying and treating your migraine attacks is of the utmost importance. As a paid spokesperson for No Time for Migraines, sponsored by Promeus Pharma, I wanted to let you know about a great resource to help you better understand your migraine attacks. Visit notimeformigraines.com to identify different types of migraine attacks you may be experiencing, and follow No Time for Migraines on social media to connect with other migraine sufferers and to find tips that will help you knock out your migraine monsters. All right, this week's migraine tip of the week has to do with a supplement known as Butterbur. Butterbur has received a lot of praise and a lot of scorn in the migraine community. It's received a lot of praise because it is very well regarded as a reducer of migraine frequency. Taken in the right quantities, very many studies have shown that it reduces your overall migraine frequency. If you're an episodic migraine sufferer, that's great news, and if you're a chronic migraine sufferer, that can seem like an awesome bit of news to get. The better part is that Butterbur is a naturally occurring, readily accessible, no prescription needed, no insurance needed supplement that you can get over the counter, no questions asked. And so it was very alarming when the American Academy of Neurology and the International Headache Society pulled it, and all of their supplements actually from their supplement guide. They very regularly update their classification of different medications for migraine, and they list them in different categories, ones that they think have the best statistical and research evidence behind them, and then the ones that they have, kind of medium evidence for being good for migraine, and then the ones that have the least evidence for them. And they actually, a few years ago, created a list for supplements, and at the top of the list, the highest, included Butterbur. And I remember going to a headache specialist who was touting the benefits of Butterbur, that I immediately needed to get on it, that it was going to, almost certainly help at least reduce one migraine a month. He was pitching it as this really easy to get and very powerful supplement that will help my particular condition. Now, the mechanisms why is Butterbur doing this weren't very well known, still aren't very well known, but it was very well correlated in the data that an increase in Butterbur supplementation was you would see a reduction in your migraine frequency. And so many people, because of these big powerhouses like the American Academy of Neurology and the International Headache Society, saying that it is in their top tier of supplements to take if you have a migraine, were being promoted as this kind of miracle supplement. Not quite a miracle supplement, of course, but it was one thing that every neurologist and headache specialist was aware of. And then boom, all of a sudden, one day, the supplement list was fully retracted by those two organizations. And the reason is that they were finding that supplement companies that they had been primarily using for their studies, that were providing the Butterbur out of Germany, either had been contaminated by other things in the factories, or the specimens themselves were just low-grade specimens that had other things in them, but they were compromised by compounds that were actually very detrimental to patients' livers. I think a couple cases of liver failure were reported, as well as just kind of chronic liver conditions that were only caused by certain things that were found in these Butterbur supplements. And so given that supplementation is very unregulated, at least in the United States, the supplement guide was fully pulled. And the reasoning there seems fairly well justified, right? You can't guarantee what's in any particular supplement, either bottle or pill itself. In the United States, there's very little regulation. And so if you're going to tell millions of migraine sufferers, take these 3 supplements because they're going to help your migraine, and they take them, and then they cause, random organ failure because of the other stuff that's in them besides the supplement that they were thinking they were getting, obviously that would be very negligent on the part of these big organizations. And so they just pulled their supplement guide altogether, and this kind of created a little bit of a buzz. It didn't create the biggest buzz. I was a little surprised. There were times where I felt like I was the only one talking about it. On my little YouTube channel, I would bring it up, or on Facebook, I would bring it up, but it didn't seem like it was the kind of thing that made waves. It just seemed like, well, it's kind of up to you now. You have to pick your own poison and talk to your doctor and see what's going on. But it wasn't like, hey, these big multinational organizations, the organizations that we rely on as medical practitioners and informed patients, has just said, we don't know what you should be taking in terms of supplements because they're dangerous. Like that to me is an enormous red flag that was never waved by many of the migraine groups out there. But what seems to be the current standard now, insofar as Butterbur is concerned, is that if you, and you need to talk to your doctor very closely with this, if your liver is functioning fairly normally or very normally or as normal as anyone else's, I guess that's what normal is, right? As long as your liver is functioning normally, then Butterbur, as long as you're getting it from a source, a company that has enough of a reputation, has enough of a departmental checking system to make sure that you're actually getting what you're paying for and not getting any of the dangerous stuff, then Butterbur is likely safe for you. But if you have liver conditions, or you're buying Butterbur from companies that don't really have a good reputation, or are just kind of a supplement company that maybe you see at a nutrition store and then it's gone the next week, maybe they went out of business or something, those are the kind that you're supposed to avoid. But it's very, very still kind of a wild, wild west thing where it's up to you, the consumer, to be as educated about the products you're buying as possible, because the government does not regulate these things, does not regulate them to the degree that they would regulate like an over-the-counter medication like Tylenol or ibuprofen. And so obviously this is a large concern. They very great many people think that they should be involved in regulating these things, given the fact that they can have such adverse health consequences, and we have very, very little impact on them. And so you got to be very, very careful when you're picking your supplements. I do want to know what your preferred supplement companies and brands are, though. So hit me up on social media. Let me know. Hit me up on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, or on, whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Let me know in your review what supplement company or brands you really prefer and why. I have a couple of companies that I like, but I don't want it to be limited to just the ones that I like. I want to know about all of the good ones. So definitely let me know what your brands are. Let me know what your preferred companies are. Want to help everybody know, help every migraine sufferer know what the good companies are. And if you know which the bad ones are, please let me know too. The ones to avoid are sometimes just as important as the ones to buy from. So if your liver is okay and you're buying from a good company, you're likely to be okay, but you probably want to stay in close contact with your doctor to have regular checkups, just to make sure that you're not experiencing any adverse effects, or that you picked up a bad batch or a bad bottle or a bad whatever from the company. So that is it for this week's migraine tip. Let us get to the show closeout. All right, everyone, that is going to wrap up this week's bit of migraine podcasting. There are a lot of other migraine podcasts cropping up, but I do appreciate you listening to this one. I especially want to give a shout out to all of you who used my Amazon affiliate link when you were shopping on Amazon over the holiday break. Made a few bucks there. That helps me keep the podcast going, helps me pay for the hosting services for the website, for the headachereview.com, helps me do a little bit to get a new microphone and a new microphone stand. Need to get a little bit more upgraded on the camera stuff for the YouTube channel. I've been doing a lot of videos on my phone, specifically screen capture stuff for apps on your phone for migraine stuff, because I've been having a little bit of a problem with my own camera, but working on getting all of that settled. Just want to give every one of you a big shout out, a big thank you for all of that. So let's see what else we got going on next week. We're going to have another podcast. Don't see any break in the podcast schedule for the foreseeable future. No holidays, no special events coming up. So the next, 5 or 6 weeks, there should be a good 5 or 6 weeks worth of podcast for you. Hope to break that 2,000 download mark over at least some month in 2018, if not every month. That would be pretty great. So if you are new to the podcast, like I said, I hope you'll hit subscribe. I hope you'll leave a review. I hope you'll listen every week. I hope you'll share this with your friends. I've been saying it for a couple months now, but I'm going to be getting ready to do some giveaways once I get my camera issues fixed up. Then I can do a video of the giveaway stuff on Facebook and YouTube. So that's been the big delay with getting the giveaway stuff going, but we've got a couple $100 worth of migraine products to give away. So make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you're updated and are aware of all of the bits of details, all of the details about the giveaways. Additionally, if you want to be number 1,000 on the old Facebook page, head over to facebook.com/themigraineguy and hit that like button. We're getting so close to 1,000 likes. It's pretty crazy. And, we got like 1 billion migraine sufferers around the world, episodic and chronic, so 1,000 followers shouldn't be too hard to ask, am I right? Maybe if I made better content, you guys would like it more. Oh. Okay, well, I think that's going to wrap it up for this week's podcast, as I am just starting to ramble. So until next week, I hope that you will remember that you are not alone. If you want to help keep everything that the Migraine Guy does free, then you can become a patron over at the website patreon.com. That's Patreon.com. Patreon lets people contribute funds to other people whose work they value. Becoming a patron does things for me, such as allowing me to buy new products so that I can do product review videos so that you know whether or not a given migraine product actually works before you buy it. It also helps me do things like upgrade the microphones and cameras for both the YouTube channel and this podcast. And more importantly, it helps me be accountable to you, my migraine community. You can pledge as low as $1 a month if you want to, and every single dollar does help. Just head over to patreon.com/themigraineguy to become a patron today.